Hello and welcome to the program. I am Nancy Naji. This is Moneyline with Nancy. I hope you all had a wonderful weekend. This week is Nigeria's Independence Day week. Nigeria is 60, quite a milestone for us as a country, especially economically. As of today, we will start our series of Nigeria at 60. On Thursday, precisely October 1, Nigeria will be 60 years old. Has she done well? Or now, let me be gender biased. Has he done well? The motherland at 60. Has Nigeria done well at 60? Today, we will be looking at the colonial economy to the national economy. That's what we'll be looking at today. Perhaps if we have done well as a country at 60 years, and what has been our trajectory in the last 60 years. What are the impediments? What have we also achieved? What are Nigerians looking forward to, even as we celebrate 60th Independence Day anniversary on Thursday. So you can join us on all our social media platforms. Begin to send your tweets. At Nancy Lo. You can find me there. That's my handle. The show's handle on Twitter is Moneyline TV. You can also follow us on Facebook and drop your comment. The handles right now on the screen indicates where exactly you should be going to on social media. Visit us on our YouTube channel. So much great content. And I must tell you, for those that are writing their thesis, those that are doing their doctorate, you can find great content there, because I've been told, at least in the last few years, for those that are writing their PhD, in fact, some even credits me in their PhD or their project work. So you can get great content there on our YouTube channel. So today, that's what we'll be looking at. We should be in a celebratory mood, but the pandemic definitely has put a dent, a stain, so to speak, on our celebration, but it is still worth celebrating for us as a nation. To join me on this program to discuss Nigeria's economic history from the colonial days till now, I'll be having Professor Kenife, who is a lead consultant on private sector development, ECOWAS Commission. He's also the co-chair, EU Africa Business Task Force. Professor Ebere Onwudewe would also be joining me. He's the fellow Center for Democracy and Development in Abuja. Professor Ebere Onwudewe is a development economist and a political scientist. So I'll be having the two professors join me on the program. But let's quickly take a break because we have a lot to chew and to digest. Let's quickly take a break now. When we come back from the break, it will be time for us to go into the discussion and conversation. But before we go on a break, we have our questions for the day. I shouldn't forget that, where you get to be gifted with this 3-in-1 CAS protection. It's our CSR with CAS Consult, especially CAS Consult has collaborated with Moneyline with Nancy. We are still fighting the pandemic. I see a lot of us now have relaxed on wearing masks and our face shields. Please, we are still fighting coronavirus. It's not yet out. Can we continue to wear our masks so that we can defeat this thing properly? And not even, we should wear it fully. In fact, I was seeing some ministers, their masks were here. So what kind of example are you showing? So what we are doing right now on the show, our CSR with CAS Consult, will be gifting our viewers that answer the questions for the day with this. The 3-in-1 CAS protection is made up of the face mask, the face shield, as well as a hand sanitizer. And as our children will be going back to school, we need to provide them with this so that we don't have an increasing cases of coronavirus in the country. So the questions for the day will be put on the screen shortly. While we go on a break, don't forget to join us on all our social media platforms. We'll be right back.
Nothing is more important than our children. Parents, the health of your children is in your hands. Don't send them out without ensuring that they are safe. As children prepare to return to school, what have you done to keep them protected? When it's time to resume, Protect your child and others with CAS 3-in-1 Protection Pack. It comes with a medically approved face shield, a 100% cotton face mask, and a portable hand sanitizer spray approved by NAFDAC. Place your order and it will be delivered to your doorstep by FedEx courier service anywhere in Nigeria at no extra cost. Call our 24/7 call center at 09-904-1000 or visit our website at casppe.com.ng. CAS 3-in-1 Protection. Protect others to protect yourself.
African Economic Congress, this year celebrating its second edition, will see debates concerning key issues in African economies, holding with the theme Post-COVID-19, Africa in the New Economic Order, with over 30 local and international speakers. Be part of the largest business event in Africa from the 2nd to the 4th of November 2020 via broadcast television stations and digital platforms. AEC welcomes government institutions, businesses to showcase their products and services during the Congress. For inquiries, please contact 0907 3703 649 or 0906 6912 600 or email events@aecongress.org. Registration is now open on the website www.aecongress.org. Join us at the 2020 virtual edition of the African Economic Congress.
All right, welcome back. In case you're just joining us, it's time for our conversation now. Nigeria at 60. This whole week, we'll be looking at it, different topics we have lined up for you. So in case you were not born in the 60s, like I wasn't born in the 60s, but you want to understand how the economy of the 60s worked or how the economy from independence has worked till now, you need to watch out for this program this whole week. All right, Professor Kenife is joining me right now. He's the lead consultant on private sector development, ECOWAS Commission. Prof, good to have you on the program. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Prof, would it be, I don't think it would be abominable for me to ask, where were you in the 60s? Let me ask, start from, how old were you in the 60s? Let's start from there. I wasn't born there.
I was born just before you entered your 60s. So I was one of the children that ushered independence to Nigeria.
Okay. So it is good. What I just wanted to say that is, it is good for us. We are looking at the economic history from colonial days to now. So will it be right to say, especially for young people of these days, that say, those of you that were born before independence, and just after independence enjoyed the economic proceeds of Nigeria? Will it be right to say that?
Well, I think so. What we had then was a preponderance of an agricultural sector that was more than 60% of the GDP. You know that today the agriculture is only 22% of our GDP. So the industries were dominated, as you know, with mining resources, and the energy source was mainly coal and fossil energy, which has actually continued today in some way or the other. But then the proportion of service sector was very small because it was evolving. And now service sector has flipped over. That's 65% of GDP. And the agriculture is 22% of GDP. Industry is still struggling where it is at about 20%. So there are some remarkable difference in what it was then and what it is now. You know, ICT is the sector, broadcasting, Nollywood, all of these things are just jumping out on us as brand new sectors.
Can you just quickly give me a history of what you can remember and what you lived through from the colonial days till now? at least you will be, I know your children are grown up, but perhaps if you're having some kind of conversations with them, or when I was growing up, or my dad did this during the 50s, or this were the stories my father or my mom told me at that time, what would those conversations be about Nigeria's economy?
Well, for a start, there are many families like our fathers, my father, and many others. They actually were only able to go to school because their parents were able to collect cashew nuts and then palm oil palms. Those were the kernels, and break them. And those were how they were able to collect the revenue to be able to send our fathers to school for however long that they went. But now, ironically, those little resources and economic trees that formed the base for our economy then are actually partially gone into extinction, and we're now working to revive them. But it's just how it developed then. Then you will see that the major emphasis from the governance system then were build more plantations. So activities were all around agriculture, plantations, and we have cash crops in the north, like groundnuts, mountains of groundnut pyramids, and then those were commodities that were being exported just as raw commodities. You had a lot of cocoa and all rubber, and they're all raw, gum arabic, and then of course you have the mineral resources side of it, which is just the coal. But one thing that I can also say is this: the last time that the colonial masters laid tracks for railway lines was in 1927. So you can see that those lines they were laying were to go to the economic centers and bring out the crops, bring out the mining from Jos, bring down the coal from Enugu, taking all the way to Port Harcourt, all the way to Lagos. So that's the line. All those were economic locations that we are taking the rail lines to, and we haven't improved. We're only just beginning to hear investment now into rail. After how many years? Since 1927. So you can see how even as we are pouring money in infrastructure, people who have difficulty in finding where the infrastructures are connecting to economic centers. You can see the dichotomy. Now we are building infrastructures, but it's not a case where you can say that 80% of the infrastructure are heading out to connect to resources, industrial centers and the economic centers to generate wealth. So it's a very big difference of emphasis. Then you have a qualitative education standard that was quite high, actually, because I know that the British universities were simply taking anything from Nigerian universities. Those who had third class actually got admission to foreign universities to do their masters and PhD, and when they go there, they prove able to do the postgraduate studies. But now they have questions about our second class honors and first class and all that, because the quality has stripped considerably, and we're having to send people all over the place to get education. So there are many things that I will tell my children about the differences. There was so much security that people can travel and sleep on the road, traveling from Port Harcourt to Kanu or that, and they don't worry about armed robbery. But now you can hardly do that. If you don't have a flight, it's a problem. You have to be journeys that you can consummate within the hours of the day. But even then, there's still risks on areas where you would want to travel to. So there are remarkable differences, but some of them could be helped. But if I put my economic hat and say, why are we where we are and we haven't actually moved along with other nations? My answer would be that we know what oil has done to our economy, created a lot of opportunities, but at the same time, the politics around it and the political economy around it hasn't actually allowed us to move forward as a nation in terms of building our infrastructure and building our economy. And what we now find is that the 10 biggest economies in the world, none of them was built on oil. I mean, you can look at those from America, Germany, Japan, all of them. And even the biggest state in America, which is California, has an economy bigger than the whole of Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. And is the 5th largest economy in the world. That's a state, and it's not built on oil. It's built on Silicon Valley, Hollywood, agriculture. That's what it's built on. You go to Texas, which is one state that doesn't have as much oil as we have in our Niger Delta. They have over 200 refineries and petrochemicals. You're still wondering, are they producing for America? They're producing for the whole world. Then you come to education. We are struggling with 150 universities in the country, serving over 200 million people. In America, they have 2,600 universities for a population of 300 million. They're not training Americans, they're training the whole world. So, I'm at a loss, to be honest, on where we place our emphasis. But the decisive difference between Nigeria as an economy that is growing and all other nations that have left us behind is the role of technology in defining and redefining all factors of production and means of exchange. So what you now find the whole world doing is that all of them are moving away from fossil energy dependent economic development. They're moving away from fossil energy. Fossil means natural gas using metal for nuclear reactors, things that are disposable. They are moving away from that. They are all heading to non-fossil bioeconomy, building their economy based on bio resources and based on non-fossil resources. Okay. So that is the significant difference. And Nigeria has not moved an inch in this area. All you hear for the 50 years ago is diversify, diversify, diversify. And the diversification program is not really rooted in moving away from that industrial base. We haven't. That is where we need to start moving away.
Prof, I think I have to halt you now and bring in Professor Ebere Onwudewe, who is a development economist as well as a political scientist. Professor Onwudewe, welcome to the program and good to have you join us. Hello, Prof, can you hear me? Yes, Prof, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, Prof, we're discussing Nigeria at 60 from the colonial.
I can hear you very well.
Yes, from the colonial economy to the national economy. And I have two professors joining me. What a privilege today. Like I told Professor Ife that I wasn't born in the 60s. And let me also ask you the question. Where were you in 1960, Prof?
I was in school.
Prof, can you hear me? So tell me, where were you?
I was in school in 1960.
Oh,
I was one of those who celebrated. I hear you.
Were you part of the pupils or students that were on the streets with the Nigerian flag and was waving it? I was told the story. I wasn't there.
I hear her, you know. She's speaking, but I can't hear her. I didn't hear what you said, Nancy. I can see you, but
okay.
I can't hear you.
Prof, I will need you to unmute.
I think somebody's muting me over there.
I will need you to unmute your system so that you can hear me. Can you just press the unmute button so that you can hear me well? Okay, while we'll try to... Prof, are you there now? Okay, while we'll try to get Prof back with the connection. Professor Ife, do you think that Nigeria is now a poorer country than when we started at independence?
It's very relative term. Our GDP has gone more than 10 times or even 20 times more than what it was there if you use GDP to measure the wealth of the nation. Our population has more than quadrupled. It was about 50 million then. We are now 202 million. So we've moved in population. In terms of GDP, we have actually moved in GDP per capita, which is really what measures the wealth. We are substantially much higher in GDP per capita. But if you talk about the gap between the poor and the rich, I think it is wider now. We have far more poverty than we had then. Because the poverty that we're having now is even food security is a challenge now. But it wasn't a challenge then. People always have something to eat. But the opportunities were far less then than now. Here, the opportunities are endless. There are there are Nollywood opportunities, there are so many opportunities because service sector has come in and become now a dominant sector. But it wasn't like that then. Then was mainly, everything is agrarian based, and the industries have not actually kicked in. So the quality of life is a lot more now than it was then. But the poverty gap is much wider now. There are a handful of people who are billionaires, but then there are hundreds of millions who are struggling. About over 80 million are struggling to make it in any one day. That is the people you call living below the poverty line. But don't forget that the population has grown tremendously.
Okay. Professor Amudiwe is back now. These are some of the technology hiccups we are talking about in terms of bandwidth, in terms of penetration. It's still part of what we are going to be talking about this week. Prof. Amudiwe, are you there now? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. So, Prof, tell me as a background.
So we can speak now.
Yes, where were you in the 60s? Were you among those that were waving the Nigerian flag, green, white, and green? Then just speak to me about what the colonial days were like, because colonialism was a major feature of our economic history. When Nigeria is being talked about globally, it is regarded as the largest black nation. So just encapsulate for me what the colonial economy was, perhaps beyond using the Nigerian pound, because we were using the Nigerian pound then. And where were you in the 60s? Just encapsulate that time for me, if you recall.
Okay, well, in the 60s, as I was trying to say, I was in school, and I was one of those students who was very elated and happy in waving the flag, ushering in political independence for Nigeria. So yes, I was quite happy that happened at that time when I was very young. But in terms of colonial economy, I think one important point that needs to be made is that it was not an economy that was designed for the development of Nigeria. It was an economy that was designed for extraction of raw materials for the British market, and also for selling manufactured products from Britain, from England, to the Nigerian market. In the process, there was a rudimentary development of our infrastructure. We must admit that. But that was done to enable the economy of that time to operate. And we gained from it in many ways. So that's the kind of way I look at the economy of the colonial period. It was designed, all the infrastructure were designed to enable the extraction of raw materials, rubber, palm oil, rubber for tire building in the metropolitan economy, cocoa for making those chocolates and other such sweet tooth condiments, cotton, groundnuts. So there were a lot of things that were motivated by the economy, by the economic needs of the colonizers.
Okay, Prof.
And if we were doing the colonizing, maybe we would do the same. Yes.
Prof, let me just come in there.
Yes.
Yes. And speak to you about, you said something very interesting, which was that the colonial economy was not really meant for the development of the Nigerian economy. And when you were talking about that, what came to my mind was the transatlantic trade that we had then, of course, by the British and by the Europeans. Have you actually seen us metamorphosing from that kind of economy to where we are right now? Because if you still see a lot of things, especially what happened in the 60s, in the 70s, even in the 80s, that the World Bank loans and all of them came in, we still have our apron strings tied to the colonial masters, in quotes.
Well, of course, just because there was transition from colonialism to post-colonial period did not actually mean that the interest in the economic relationship of the metropole and the periphery, that's us, was going to be severed. It is very, very bad expectation of anybody to actually think that this means the end of economic control of control of the Nigerian economy by the British colonial powers. And it's not unique to Nigeria. It's also the same thing in other parts of Africa, in other parts of the world. The colonial powers do not leave and abandon everything, and everything ends and become total independent as a country. You will continue to trade. They will still be looking for very favorable balance of trade. And so it is in that sense that the post-colonial period has been described as a period of indirect rule, which means that the direct colonialism, the direct in-house control of the country was over. But what you have now is control, pulling the apron strings from outside the borders of the territory known as Nigeria.
Okay, Professor Ife. Okay.
Yes.
Prof, have you landed? Professor Amudiwe, have you landed?
Well,
I'm
just going to say that to do that, you do need internal collaborators.
What do you mean?
To help make internal collaborators.
What do you mean by that?
To help make the indirect. Well, that means that, you need people like me and you who will continue a relationship that will be mutually beneficial to the two participating groups, to those operating from the core countries and to those operating from the periphery countries. Because you need that to have the continuation of post-colonialism, the continuation of that kind of influence. And I'm thinking that in our own individual personal relationships, you will create that kind of continuing relationship even as you're leaving the primary place of abode.
Okay, Professor Ife, let me come to you now. You've heard what Professor Amudiwe has said. If you take a look at the colonial administration, let's dwell a bit there for the next 2-3 minutes or so. You look at the colonial administration, it was really hinged on agriculture and trade, just like Professor Amudiwe had said, in terms of even bringing their goods here. I remember there was something, my dad has always said it many times, even while I was growing up. I think in the 80s, I can't remember when now, whether 82 or 83, he told me he bought his car, his Peugeot car, at that point, I think 4,500 naira. If you go and price a Peugeot now, you should know what it takes. And in fact, a lot more people have told me since then that they even bought it cheaper, beyond moving beyond what currency the Nigeria was using, that I think the Nigerian pound and the West African pound or what have you. If you take a look at the colonial days till now, was the Nigerian economy promising at that point that the colonial masters handed us our independence?
I think my answer is yes. The structures that they had then accounted for, that is, they succeeded in doing exactly what they wanted to do. They had requisite infrastructure to support commodity export, raw commodity export. That's why they had the rail lines getting to every nook and cranny in Nigeria to extract the raw materials and commodities and head out to the seaport. And the port had enough capacity to evacuate what they are bringing in. And then they now brought in all the finished goods into our country, including those cars. And then they were able to permeate the, so what they had served their purpose. And then they had an effective administration that also supported what they were doing. But they never factored in value addition. Value addition is what is developmental. If there is a value addition, that would have helped developmental agenda for Nigeria, which Professor Onwudiwe is alluding to. And that was a missing dimension. We can accept that from the colonists, but you cannot accept and excuse that from the 60s when they have gone and we entered into the oil. We still never paid premium to development of our productive forces and then value addition. We still continue with the tradition of extracting crude oil, shipping it out there for them to process and exporting our job, and then paying for it to be processed and brought back here again for us to consume refined products. And we made very, very little attempt to diversify the economy at that stage. And that is what we are living with today. And as I said to you before, there are more things that we could have done in the name of diversifying the economy by actually removing the total dependence on fossil energy economic development. By moving away to non-fossil economic development. Our power generation industry is heavily dependent on that. Our transport system is heavily dependent on that. And then our industries are still heavily dependent on burning diesel and petrol and gas. And that we have moved, that's where we need to move, so that we can create new products that are going to fuel our growth rather than depend on the fossil energy equation.
Okay, let me bring in Professor Onwudiwe here, and let's talk a bit of what you've just said in terms of this fossil fuel. And perhaps it will start from 1958 when Nigeria discovered oil. From that 1958 to the 60s, we saw government taking over the economic direction, growth and development. I remember, not that I remember, I wasn't born then, I read that, okay, I wasn't born in the 60s. Let me not confuse myself. Okay, during the military administration days that we saw, President Obasanjo, for example, with programs like Operation Feed the Nation, Shagari with Green Revolution, some other administrations have come with different programs. How have you seen this metamorphosis that we've gone through economically from the fossil fuel, which Prof is talking about, Professor Ife is talking about, up till now? We still have a lot of that.
Okay, yes, I think Prof Ife has actually dealt with in a good way the situation that you just described. I think what we have probably had because of oil income was growth without development. And even though a lot of people still blame colonialism for our underdevelopment, I think that the blame is squarely on our shoulders. Because even if we were still being used, we allowed ourselves to be used. So the lack of transformational growth, the lack of inclusive growth, the continuing indirect rule that allows the continuing exploitation is our problem. It is not the problem of the former colonial masters. This is not saying that those benefiting from it in the metropole will look the other way as the money is coming into their accounts. It is because you that is sending the money in the account shouldn't be blaming those that are receiving it. Our problem is multifaceted. The people here know what to do, but self-interest does not allow them to do exactly what they should do for the benefit of our own population. The self-interest has led to this massive corruption, which is the big elephant in the room all the time. And this massive corruption requires the participation of banks in the metropole. And that chain, that tapestry of connections that enables the transfer of our wealth into foreign banks, it's done by people here, our banks here, our own corrupt government officials, working with our banks, working with their correspondent banks, or whatever term that is, and other banks in other countries. Those countries, well, they make a lot of, some of them take positions that sound very good about stopping corruption in our country. But they never do as much in stopping the acceptance of our money in their own countries. Because it is a two-way thing. It takes two to tango. A penny will not live here without our banks knowing. So it's not just the government, you see. It's not that our government that is the problem. It is our own private sector as well. They are part and parcel of the corruption that is killing our country. And it is not the volume of money that is stolen that is all the trouble. It is also sending that money outside the country. If the money is the billions that are stolen are left in this country, they will be available for development. They'll be available for development, even if they're coming from the pockets of those who are corrupt. They can build factories here. They can give scholarships. They can build foundations that support the needy. If the money is in our country, it will drive down interest rate. There'll be competition. But this money is sent into other economies where they promote a reduced interest rate, where people can borrow money and do housing and do investments and do all those things that we're not able to do here. Private companies here borrow money at very high rate, and you can't expect them to make profit. And therefore, you can't expect development. How can they make profit when, after borrowing money at very high interest rates, such as in the double digits, like 20%, 21%, and then they have to provide their own water, they have to provide their own electricity, and how can they compete with the imports that compete with their own products right here at home? Okay. So talking about development without going through all of this is really looking the other way.
Okay, let me bring in Professor Ife here. I hope Prof.
And so I think.
Okay, let me bring in. Okay, Professor Amudiwe, you wanted to say something?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Bring in the Prof.
Okay, is Professor Ife?
No, that's fine. I'll rather hear from Professor Ife.
Okay, is Professor Ife still there? And let's take it off from where. Okay, I'm being told his signal is gone. So, Professor Amudiwe, let me just stick with you a bit with just what you've said in terms of corruption and corrupt practices. When you're just talking about siphoning our monies to countries abroad, what came to my mind is the report that I saw, was it 2 weeks ago, was it last week it was released? Global banks such as HSBC, JP Morgan Chase and all of that, I don't know if you saw the report last week, were being indicted in, having suspicious deals, shady deals over the years. Those banks are trying to exonerate themselves now. But what would you say was the history of corruption in Nigeria? Because perhaps when you were born or so, or when you were growing up, it wasn't like that. So at what point did we begin to see traces of corruption that have ballooned till now? Because when I was taking a look at the economic history of Nigeria, what came to my mind then was, in fact, after independence, one of the major changes during independence was the share of government spending. I think in 1962 it was about 9%. In 1979, 44%. In the 80s, it reduced because of the problems we had in the 80s. Would you actually also tie what you've just said to what I've just said in terms of government spending and government expenditure, where perhaps government began to saw loopholes?
Yes, well, when, a lot of the expenditure can be attributed to the period of war. It was an expensive thing, the Civil War. So if you're taking a historical look at it. But the issue of government size, which you are addressing, is different from that of corruption. Although they may be related, because there'll be over budgeting, there'll be too much money, there'll be floating around, and those who are disposed to taking some of those monies will take them as much as possible. There's still money in huge numbers because they try to protect themselves in courts after all, or if they get into trouble or something like that. So you need money to fight it. When you hear the term corruption is fighting back, it's not fighting back empty-handed. It has its own wherewithal to fight back. And that comes from the hood. That is the reason they steal huge sums of money. And so I think that the issue of government size, the reason I want us to look at it differently is that it has a lot to do with bad governance in our country. And corruption is also an expression of bad governance. But okay, so let's take the issue of government size. Every government should do just the minimum and let the private sector do the rest. And the reason why we have a lot of increase, ballooning of the size of government is because of centralization of power. The power is centralized too much. And centralization of power means that you will also have the means to do the responsibilities that you have accumulated at one center. So if you divide up that responsibility and then give the money that is needed to carry the functions out, then you wouldn't have too much money concentrated at one spot for people to dip their hands in. That's why it is important to decentralize this government. You need to decentralize it. You need to decentralize it. Decentralization is a fight against corruption.
Okay.
It is a way of fighting corruption.
Okay, Prof, let's quickly take a break, and when we come back, we will... Hello, YouTubers. Welcome to Moneyline with Nancy TV YouTube channel. This is where we provide you with instructive business directions, processes, and guidance to help you assess the right resources to fund your businesses to withstand every form of internal and external shock. You will find here awesome informative videos on business, entrepreneurship, and lifestyle just to help you make informed business and financial decisions. Punch the subscribe button and let us drive you through the world of business. Please follow all our social media platforms on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and follow us for latest updates on our website.
African Economic Congress, this year celebrating its second edition, will see debates concerning key issues in African economies. Holding with the theme Post-COVID-19, Africa in the New Economic Order, with over 30 local and international speakers. Be part of the largest business event in Africa from the 2nd to the 4th of November 2020 via broadcast television stations and digital platforms. AEC welcomes government institutions, businesses to showcase their products and services during the Congress. For inquiries, please contact 0907 3703 649 or 0906 6912 600 or email events@aecongress.org. Registration is now open on the website www.aecongress.org. Join us at the 2020 virtual edition of the African Economic Congress.
All right, welcome back. We're discussing the colonial economy to the national economy that we do have right now. Professor Ebere Onwudewe, a political scientist and a development economist, as well as Professor Ken Ife, lead consultant on private sector development at ECOWAS Commission, have been giving their insights since we started this conversation. Professor Ebere Onwudewe, you're still with me. Let's take a look at the major economic collapse that Nigeria experienced, I think, in the 70s and in the 80s. How do you think that it has helped or perhaps impeded Nigeria's economic trajectory? Because even during the 80s or so, we saw Nigeria expelling millions of illegal workers. I think that was the period of perhaps Ghana must go and other Africans must go, which we're seeing some kind of retaliation right now, especially from Ghana with what they're doing with some of their economic and business policies. So how do you think that the economic collapse of the 70s and 80s impeded or perhaps helped us in this economic journey?
How it has helped us?
That's what I'm asking. Did it help or did it impede?
Oh,
Is it a challenge? Yes.
Okay. Well, you know, I think initially you also mentioned the roles that World Bank and IMF and all those other international institutions played in those periods with policies that belt tightening policies that were recommended for us. So I think that that the period when the oil was flowing, when General Gowan was saying to us that the problem is not money, but how to spend it. So we had a period that money was here, and that's why a lot of those other West African neighbors were pouring into the Nigerian economy, and after the good times began to dwindle, we took that policy position of returning them home. And I don't know if what is happening in Ghana now is a retaliation. If it's a retaliation, it's a stupid one, because our own banks, our own businessmen are part of the backbone of Ghanaian economy as we speak. So the two situations are not identical. They're not identical at all. So we didn't have a lot of Ghanaian capital in Nigeria when that was happening. It was all Nigerian money. And as for those belt tightening policies, they had negative effects because it was the period that started our diminished investments in education and in health. Education and health, they are very, very primary areas to monitor a country's development, to actually help a country's development. You know, because without a healthy and educated and skilled manpower, there is no way you can attain the level of development that we are looking for. And despite all the negatives that we have said in terms of the role foreign agencies or colonialism had played, look, it has not stopped the Nigerian economic spirit from soaring. So we have made a lot of also good advances. We have created institutions that are playing positive roles in helping our economic advances. We have created very world-class entrepreneurs. You know, you can name them from Dangote to Elumelu to Peterside to all of them. So many of them. They're all Nigerians. They have built up businesses that are of world-class distinction. So it is not that we are all on the ground floor. It is just that we are not where we should be, and that we should not be at this time, after 60 years of self-rule, be the poverty capital of the world. That is a very shameful category to usurp, to take over, to dominate. That's not where we should be. We have very brilliant and endowed humanity here. You know, humanity that is brainy, that can compete anywhere in the world. Why can't we develop it? Why can't we develop it? Why can't we invest in good health? Why do our money men run out to go to other places to get health care when you can build the same facility here with 1/3 of the money you have stolen? And we could be a place where we could be the health tourism, a thriving health tourism for at least our immediate neighbors. And the schools, our standards are diminishing, are going down, so much so that our students are trooping into Ghana. And all of this means a lot of capital transfer because they don't go to school there for free. They go to England, they go to America, they go to several other places because they cannot find space here at home, even when they are qualified. We have so many qualified professionals who we are unable to provide facilities to put their skills into work for the benefit of our economy.
Prof, I think we need to leave it at that because it's a series here which I have started today, Nigeria at 60, and chronicling Nigeria 60, the economic history to where we are now, what we should be doing, what are the gains, and what we need to do, at least so that we are not repeating the same thing in the next 60 years. So thank you, Prof, for being on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, I've been speaking with Professor Ebere Onwudewe, a development economist as well as a political scientist. Also within the program, Professor Ken Efe, the lead consultant on private sector development at ECOWAS Commission, also joined me. We couldn't get him on board again because of the network problem. But thank you all for investing your time with us today. Please join me again tomorrow. It's a series, Nigeria 60. We will be 60 officially on Thursday. I am Nancy Naji. Protect yourself. Keep safe. Thank you for watching our video. Please hit the subscribe button below, turn on post notification to follow all our updates.